You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and I have to start with this stupid idea that the NBA has to make a second bubble, this time in Chicago, to have the bottom 8 teams that didn't make this restarted season play, in essence, a glorified summer league. And make no mistake about it, that's what this is. There's no meaning behind these games. It's not an elimination tournament for the draft lottery. That would actually be kind of interesting if you did it that way. I mean, put some meaning into the games, right? I really need soundproofing. I mean, I'm getting it next week, but these landscapers outside are driving me nuts. Nothing against them, they're just doing their jobs. But they're impacting my job. That's the thing. That's what I don't like. And they're impacting you, which is more important. Man alive. Alright. Back to this glorified summer league. Like I said, no meaning behind the games at all. It's just so that those players won't get rusty, and they'll play competitive basketball against NBA-level talent. Look, I understand the rust aspect of it. A guy like Steph Curry hasn't played basketball since March. You know, the same thing with a guy like Kevin Knox or Karl Anthony Towns or Kobe White or whoever you want to say. But there is no way on God's green earth that this is going to work. Firstly, you can't even get the bubble in Orlando going. Alright? 25 players have tested positive for the coronavirus. And that's just counting the players that have tested positive since mandatory testing started. You've had a bunch prior. Secondly, shouldn't you be focusing all your time, money, and energy towards the meaningful games in Orlando? Alright, it's not like you have everything going so perfectly in Orlando that you can focus on the bottom 8 teams. No! That's not how this is working. You're having a tough time getting the Orlando bubble going. You can lie and say everything's going swimmingly, but we know it's not. If it was, you wouldn't have all these players testing positive for the coronavirus. Thirdly, who's going to play in these games? Think about it. If you're a veteran on one of these teams, a guy like Steph Curry or Kevin Love or Blake Griffin or Wayne Ellington or a guy like that, are you really going to play in these games? They mean nothing. Literally nothing. They don't count for standings. They don't count for draft position. They count for nothing. It's just to get work in. I understand the getting work in aspect of it, and it's important, no question. But to establish a second bubble when you can't even get the first one off the ground yet is such a waste of time, money, and energy. I can't even begin to explain it. You know, I've said in the past that I would opt out of the NBA restart if I was a player. If I was a player on one of the bottom 8 teams and this bubble got okayed, no way am I going with my team. None whatsoever. The Orlando bubble, you know, if I was a great player and my team was making a playoff push, okay, fine, you can talk me into that. But if this is a guy like Steph Curry, who has nothing to gain from this, that's it. No chance. I'm staying home. It's not worth it to me. I have to put myself first in this situation. This isn't even a team aspect. What good does this do the 8 teams? I'm not talking about their players. I'm talking about the teams themselves. They don't get any more wins on their ledger. They don't get a better draft position. And they don't get better playoff seeding. All this is a glorified summer league. There's nothing. There are no stakes to this. The fact that this is really being discussed is the single stupidest thing I can think of for the NBA to be doing right now. Adam Silver should be focusing everything on Orlando. You want to tell me that's unfair to the bottom 8? And he had those owners in his ear? The Dan Gilberts and the Joe Lacobs and the James Dolans of the world? Fine. You know what you say to them? You should have been better. So that way we would have cared about you. We can't worry about the bottom feeders. There's nothing wrong if you're a commissioner with saying we need to prioritize our best teams. And I'm not saying for all time. I'm just talking about in this specific situation. If you're Silver, you need to say to the bottom 8 teams, I have to prioritize Orlando. I can't worry about you right now. I'm having enough issues with Orlando. You really think I can do a second bubble? How is that going to work? How is there any way that they can get that off the ground? You have cases spiking left and right. You're going to have the veterans opt out. There's no way that the established players of these 8 teams are going to play. No chance. It's going to be a glorified summer league. No one's going to watch these games. Think about it. You'd have these games on the same time as meaningful games. I don't care if you're a fan of one of these 8 teams. You're not watching them over the meaningful games in Orlando. There's no way. You want to tell me you're not going to televise it? Okay, you're just making my point that it's unnecessary. This is so unnecessary. Yes, the rust factor is real. Yes, it's something that these teams are going to need to contend with. But you know what? Dems to breaks. Okay? Yes, it's unfair. I understand that. There's no question that it's unfair. But there's nothing that can be done about it. If you're that upset about it, be better. Maybe this will motivate you to be better. It's so blasted stupid. Moving on now to the Dodgers signing AJ Ramos. And this is a fantastic move. This guy was an all-star in 2016. He was one of the best closers in all of baseball. He had 40 saves that year. Then the year after, he plays well for the Marlins, but gets traded to the Mets, and then immediately lays an egg. He was Edwin Diaz before Edwin Diaz. He was terrible in the half a season for the Mets in 2017. 2018, he was abysmal. He had injury concerns. And I give him credit for making a comeback. Trying to live his dream again. And the Dodgers did a good job by adding a former All-Star to their player pool. Nothing wrong with that. Alright, worst comes to worst, he doesn't make it. Or if he does make it, he lays an egg. Alright, fine. It's only for 60 games. I mean, that's going to be the excuse for players that have a bad season. Well, it was 60 games, I had a tough time getting going, you know everything that happened, blah, blah, blah. It's perfect for the players. They have a built-in excuse. But regardless, this is a great move for the Dodgers. It makes perfect sense. Low risk, high reward. Nothing wrong with that. It's a good quality depth move. Alright, it's time to start the trifecta by recapping the Washington Redskins 2020 NFL Draft Class. Or should I say the Washington NFL team, as it seems like they're very close to changing their name. FedEx implored them to, Nike stopped selling their stuff. In fact, just today, the Redskins said that they're reviewing the name, something that Dan Snyder has been vehemently opposed to for years. I mean, personally, I'll tell you, I don't have a dog in the fight. I'm not a Native American, so it doesn't offend me. I really can't comment on it. If they want to change the name, that's perfectly fine. Go to the Senators. Seriously. The Washington Senators. Have a Washington Senators football team. I think that would be really cool. But I'll tell you, it doesn't concern me one way or the other what they do. If they change the name, fine. If they don't change the name, fine. I'm not offended by the name because I'm not Native American. If I was Native American, maybe it would offend me. But I don't know. But back to their picks. Chase Young was the best prospect in this draft. By far. Not even close. As great a year as Joe Burrow had, he wasn't Young. This guy dominated at OSU. Did everything you want an edge rusher to do. Did he have some injury concerns? A little bit. I mean, he got hurt against Wisconsin. But he came back against Penn State and had 9 tackles and 3 sacks. Now, after that, he didn't play well. And, look, I'm sure the Redskins did their homework on him. Are you feeling okay? He's going to have to learn to play through pain. It's just that simple. And I'm sure that's something he was grilled on. Why couldn't you play through this? Were you really in that much pain? Blah, blah, blah. But that's the only red flag on this guy. It is something that I think he'll be able to learn to do. This is a saying among professional wrestlers. You never truly work until you work hard. If you're going to wrestle and body slam people when you're feeling 100%, that's fine. But if you have a broken rib or a torn rotator cuff, and you have a good paycheck lined up, yeah, you're taking the paycheck. You're working through pain. Same thing with football. You've got to learn to play through it sometimes. Sometimes you can't, but if you can, your play can't slip that much. Antonio Gibson was a really, really big reach by the Redskins. And yes, I'm going to keep calling them the Redskins for now. It's still their name. As soon as they change it, I'll go to their new name. But for now, they're still the Redskins. So I'm going to keep calling them the Redskins. I had a late third round grade on this guy. He was taken in the early third round. I just don't know where he's going to play. Is he going to be a running back or is he going to be a wide receiver? His ball skills are dreadful, but he only rushed the ball 33 times last year for Memphis. That's going to be a tough transition for him, and the Redskins already have a stacked depth chart at running back. Adrian Peterson, Darius Geis, and Peyton Barber. So Gibson's best shot of making an impact is going to be as a wide receiver, but his ball skills have to get a lot better. His production wasn't terrible. He caught less than 40 passes, but in those less than 40 catches, 38 to be specific, he broke them for 735 yards and 8 touchdowns. I'd have liked him to have been featured more in the offense, but Memphis wasn't a great team. There's only so much you can do there. I think Gibson will be a solid player. His future is somewhere between wide receiver and running back. Maybe he'll play both. Maybe he'll be some kind of a weird gadget player. I don't know. What I do know is that there were better running backs available. Guys like Keyshawn Vaughn and Zach Moss were still available. And better wide receivers like Brian Edwards and Devin Duvernay were still available. You want Sadiq Charles to be so much better than he is. This guy has a great frame, 6'4", 320 pounds, started 28 games in his 3 years at LSU. I know that Joe Burrow liked him a lot, but he's terrible in pass blocking, he's terrible in run blocking, he's not a smart player, he's not a mauler. I had a mid to late third round grade on him, but that was just because you see the potential in him, and a good offensive coordinator or offensive line coach should be able to get something out of him. And Scott Turner's a smart guy. John Matsko has been an offensive line coach for a long time. I think Charles landed in a good system. I think he's going to work out for the Redskins. He's not going to be Joe Jacoby or Russ Grimm or anything, but he'll turn into a solid player for the Redskins. He could have been drafted by the wrong team, but he wasn't. And I think he's going to have a really good career. Antonio Gandy Golden was a great pick by the Redskins. This guy dominated at Liberty. I mean, you want to talk about a man among boys, this guy was that on steroids. Alright? 80 catches for 1,400 yards, I'm rounding up, and 10 touchdowns. He dominated there. He has really good ball skills. His frame is really good at 6'4", 223 pounds. The thing is, he played at Liberty. There's only so high a guy from Liberty can go. But having said that, he should have gone much higher than the compensatory part of the 4th round. It was a great pick by the Redskins. They have a really good young wide receiver core going there with McLaurin, Gandy Golden, and maybe Gibson, assuming Gibson plays wide receiver. They all have tons of talent. I love F1. He's on my keeper fantasy football team. The future's bright there. I'm telling you. I like Dwayne Haskins a lot. He's going to have a field day working with those guys. I had a 4th round grade on Keith Ismail. This guy is a jack of all trades, master of none. He played well at San Diego State. He doesn't have the best frame in the world, though. 6'3", 310 pounds. His pass blocking is okay. His run blocking is okay. But he is a smart player. He is a tough player. There's nothing wrong with taking an offensive lineman to protect your young quarterback. The only thing I'll say is they really needed to add a cornerback. Bryce Hall was sitting there. He'd have made more sense for the Redskins than Ismail. But having said that, I'm glad the Redskins didn't take him because I think Bryce Hall is going to be a really good Jet for a really long time. Khaleke Hudson dominated at Michigan last year. Led the team in tackles. Made second team All Big Ten. In a game against Minnesota, he tied an NCAA record for tackles for loss with 8. You do that in a single game. That's absolutely incredible. The thing is, he's terrible in run support. He only knows one thing, and that's kill the quarterback. I don't like guys like that. That's a mindset that's very hard to get rid of if you're a defensive coordinator. He doesn't have a great frame. He's not the strongest guy in the world. When you watch him play, you see the talent there, but part of you in the back of your mind thinks that he's one of those players who's going to succeed in college, but flame out in the pros. There's a part of me that thinks that could be Hudson. I did have an early 5th round grade on him, though. He landed in a good system in Washington. Ron Rivera is going to be able to work with him. It's possible he succeeds, but he's got a lot of work ahead of him. Cameron Curl was another guy who had a really good year last year. He played 3 seasons at Arkansas, and last year was his best season. So he picked a good time to do it. It really helped his draft stock. This was a guy who was off everyone's boards 12 months ago, and he worked his way into that 7th round conversation. I had a solid 7th round grade on him. I saw a guy with really good footwork, smart player, tough player. The thing is, he's really not fast. He doesn't have the best frame in the world at 6'1", 200 pounds. Hopefully, Curl can continue his upward trajectory, but he may revert to his pre-2019 status. But he was worth the pick for the Redskins. It made sense to take him. If James Smith-Williams had stayed healthy throughout his college career, he had the potential to be a first rounder. At least he would have been a day 2 pick. That's how talented this guy is. You can play him anywhere on the field. He has good pass rushing skills. He's good against the run. Prototypical frame of 6'3.5", 265 pounds. But his durability scares the ever-loving mercy out of you. This guy had season-ending injuries in 2015 and 2016, and last year he missed 5 games. He was a team captain, very highly respected in the locker room. If he pans out, he's going to be a big part of that Redskins defense for a long time, but if he keeps getting hurt, he's going to flame out of the league. He has to stay healthy. There's no player in this draft that you are more concerned about his injuries than this guy. Pretty good that I saved that for last, right? All in all, I like what the Redskins did. I don't love what the Redskins did. They made the right decision in taking Chase Young, but I thought they could have done a better job at wide receiver. I also don't like that they didn't take a cornerback. They really needed it. I'm gonna give them a B. I think that's really, really fair. I wasn't crazy about the Gibson pick. I like the players they took. I almost gave them a B+, but when you only have 2 picks in the first 2 days of the draft, you have to hit home runs with both of them. They hit a home run with Young, but they hit a single with Gibson. I have to ding them for that. Alright, it's time for this day in sports history. Not a lot happened on this day in sports history. No great event, no great birthdays, no deaths, thank God. So, I'm gonna bend the rules a little bit. Tomorrow is July 4th. Unreal. This year is just... it's either flying by or it's going really slowly. I don't know which. But it's hard to believe that tomorrow's July 4th. My parents said to me, "Oh, Jacob, your father wants to grill. What do you want?" It's like, why does he want to grill on Saturday? It's July 4th. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. Oh my God, you're right. So I'm bending the rules a little bit. Bunch of different ways I could have gone with July 4th. George Steinbrenner, Al Davis. But I'm gonna take you back to 1983 at Yankee Stadium, where Dave Righetti threw his no-hitter. It was Yankees-Red Sox. It was an afternoon game. No better way to spend a July 4th than at Yankee Stadium watching the best rivalry in sports. And the 41,000 people there saw baseball history. The game was scoreless until the bottom of the 5th inning. Steve Kemp got a 1-out single. Roy Smalley moved him up to second. And Andre Robertson drove him home with another single. They manufactured a run, and that was all Righetti needed. Interestingly enough, after that, Bert Campaneris drew a walk. Bases loaded, 1 out. John Tudor was the Red Sox pitcher, former Cardinal, and he struck out Don Mattingly and Dave Winfield in bases loaded situations. That's pretty darn good. If you were the manager of the 83 Yankees, Billy Martin, there was no one else who you wanted up in that situation. They didn't drive a run in. That's pretty bad. But, like I said, it was all Righetti needed. Righetti was really, really efficient. He only allowed 4 base runners the whole time. And no Red Sox made it past second base. But I'll get into that in a minute. I just want to tell you about the bottom of the 8th inning. Dave Winfield gets on with a single. Lou Piniella advances him to second base because the catcher, Jeff Newman, wasn't paying attention. Newman caught the ball in foul ground. Like I said, he wasn't paying attention, so Winfield went up to second. Don Baylor was intentionally walked. Butch Weiniger walked. Bases loaded, 2 out for Steve Kemp. Kemp hit another single. It scored Winfield and Baylor. Made it 4-0 Yankees. Bob Stanley came in to get Roy Smalley to ground out to the first baseman, Dave Stapleton. Top of the 9th we go. Everyone knows what's at stake. Jeff Newman draws a walk. Glenn Hoffman nearly grounds into a double play, but he's able to beat out the relay throw. Jerry Remy hits a ground ball to the second baseman. Hoffman was moving on the pitch, so no play at second. The out is made at first. It was Robertson to Mattingly. So that was the only runner that the Red Sox had past first base. And it came when the Red Sox were on their last out. The last batter was Wade Boggs, future Hall of Famer. He'd retire with 3,010 hits. That year, he led all of Major League Baseball in batting average with a .361 average. He also led all of Major League Baseball in on-base percentage that year with a .444. In fact, that season started a streak where 5 out of 6 years, Boggs would lead the American League in batting average. And 6 out of 7 years, he would lead Major League Baseball in on-base percentage. But he wouldn't do it that day, as Righetti got Boggs to strike out, thus throwing his no-hitter. In case you're wondering, Wade Boggs is not the only Hall of Famer to be the last out in a no-hitter. I don't know if this guy is the only other Hall of Famer, but I know that Roberto Alomar was the last out in a Nolan Ryan no-hitter. Alright, it's time for another Mount Rushmore. We're on the Montreal Canadiens now, the most successful team in hockey history. You have no idea how hard this was. Do you have any idea all the legends that have played for the Canadiens? Guy Lafleur, Jean Beliveau, the Richards, Larry Robinson, Yvan Cournoyer, Jacques Lemaire, Steve Shutt, Boom Boom, Carey Price, Jacques Plante, Patrick Waugh, Ken Dryden, Bill Durnan. You have no idea how hard this was to do. This was one of the toughest Mount Rushmores I've ever done. Certainly the toughest for hockey, maybe the toughest altogether. But I think I got it right. The correct Mount Rushmore is Maurice Richard, Guy Lafleur, Jacques Plante, and Jean Beliveau. Stan Fischler once called Maurice Richard the Babe Ruth of hockey. And there was a time where this guy was regarded as the best player in hockey history. He was so beloved in Montreal that when he was suspended by Clarence Campbell, it almost started a riot. Richard had to get on the radio to calm everyone down. Richard made 13 All-Star games, led the NHL in goals 5 times. Interestingly, he never led the NHL in points, but that doesn't mean anything when you're as great a goal scorer as he was fantastic on the power play, scored 50 and 50, something that no one thought could be done, and no one thought would be duplicated until Mike Bossy did it also. Guy Lafleur leads the Canadiens in points with 1,246. He's second in goals behind only Richard. He's first in assists. And it's kind of funny. The guys like Beliveau, the Richards, the Robinsons, the Cournoyers of the world, they all spent more time with the Canadiens than Lafleur did. But Lafleur was so blasted great that it didn't matter. He led the NHL in points 3 times. Won a Conn Smythe Trophy. He was so dominant that in that famous game, Game 7 of the semifinals, Bruins-Canadiens, whoever wins that is beating the Rangers to win the Stanley Cup. Guy Lafleur was shadowed all game by Donnie Marcotte. That was an adjustment that Don Cherry made. He knew he needed to have his best defensive forward on Lafleur at all times. I don't think Donnie Marcotte had ever been double-shifted in his life. Lafleur was being double-shifted, so Marcotte was being double-shifted. Give Cherry and Marcotte credit, it worked, but obviously the too many men on the ice penalty cost the Bruins the game. Guy Lafleur was one of the most dominant players of his era. It's really terrible how his time with the Canadiens ended. He ended up retiring when he really didn't want to. Then he went to the Rangers. Absolutely terrible end to a fantastic Canadiens career. Jacques Plante, for my money, is the 3rd best goalie in hockey history behind Patrick Roy and Martin Brodeur. This guy won 7 Vezina trophies, a Hart Trophy in 61-62, and 6 Stanley Cups, along with making 8 All-Star games. He was by far and away the best goalie of his era, even after he took a puck to the face from Andy Bathgate. It caused him to wear a face mask. So Plante was an innovator. He was the first goalie to wear a face mask, and you have to wonder how it took so long. And Jean Beliveau was a 10-time Stanley Cup winner, 2-time Hart Trophy winner, made 13 All-Star games. He was by far and away one of the best players of his era. May have been the best, if not for Gordie Howe, and he did overlap with Maurice Richard a little bit. It's a great story. He grew up in Quebec. He grew up rooting for the Canadiens, and he later became the 4th best player in their history. That's pretty darn good. If you want to know more about Canadiens history, listen to the interview that I did with Paul Logothetis about his book on Toe Blake. Really, really fun. He's a really nice guy. Next week, I don't know when exactly. It may be Monday, it may be Tuesday, depending on whatever sports news breaks. You're going to get the debut of 2 new segments that will be semi-recurring. So no more trifecta. I don't know what I'm going to call this. The Fantastic Four? No, that's taken. Can't do that. I don't know. I'll come up with something. Hope you have a great July 4th. Happy birthday, America. Until Monday, I am Jacob Valk saying that I was 3 over on the golf course the other day. 1 over a house, 1 over a patio, and 1 over a swimming pool.